The assignment was simple: analyze primitive war archives for psychological study. The alien cadets, seated in the sterile observation hall of the Galactic Military Academy, barely glanced at the title of the session: Terran Conflict Logs, Earth Cycle 1939 to 2045. Snickers echoed through the room. Earth, that barely classified Category C biosphere crawling with mammalian bipeds. It wasn't even a proper spacefaring civilization until recently. What could they possibly learn from savages? Tamarek, a dominant cadet from the Filari reptiloid race, leaned back, arms crossed, eyes narrowed in mock interest. "And let's see what the hairless primitives can teach us," he said with a smirk. Another cadet, Kriv, adjusted his crystalline faceplate, already preparing snide commentary for the group debriefing. But Jayla, the youngest in the class and the only one from a peaceborn world, noticed something odd: Category Black contamination. Warning: emotional destabilization risk. Rare. Reserved for simulation triggers known to affect even cybernetic minds. Before she could question it, the lights dimmed. A flicker. Static. Then came the first images. Mud, rain, screams, humans waist deep in filth, clinging to bolt-action rifles in the shattered remnants of trenches. Tamarek sneered. Sticks and caves. But the simulation continued. Tracer fire over Normandy. Gas masks in the trenches of Ypres, screaming steel above. Dresden. Bodies. Thousands. But none of it earned more than mild discomfort. What silenced the cadets was not the gore, it was the eyes. Footage zoomed and soldiers trembling, bloodied, yet focused. A man jaw clenched, dragging a comrade despite being shot. A woman shielding children as bombs fell, her mouth moving in silent prayer. Again and again, humans staring into certain death without flinching. No neural uplinks. No fear inhibitors. Just raw biological resolve by the time Hiroshima's flash painted the room in blinding white. No one laughed. The simulation didn't pause for comfort. It threw them into the Arctic death marshes. The firebombing of Tokyo. Guerrilla resistance. In Warsaw, footage from Earth's civil war's flags fallen, cities in ash, and yet people still building barricades. A teenage girl firing back with a handmade rifle. Comedic dying over a wounded enemy soldier. Jayla's voice finally broke the silence. They should have gone extinct. Why didn't they? No answer came. The next sequence played a lone man holding a bridge against tanks. Then a squad climbing a mountain under artillery fire. They weren't winning, but they weren't surrendering. The simulation flagged a line of commentary in red. Human combat morale does not degrade predictably. Statistical deviations suggest. Identity-based motivators override mortality logic. Tamarek's fists were clenched now, not from rage but confusion. Kriv whispered, "This isn't war, this is belief." Jayla's eyes never left the screen. One clip played on Lupa, human pinned and burning, tossing a grenade into an enemy convoy with his final breath. Not for victory, it's not even for survival. It's just so others behind him could live a moment longer. And then, without transition or warning, came the footage title that shut every mouth in the room. The Children of Grozny. No one said a word. Not even the proudest. They simply watched. Simulation ended its first segment with a line across the screen. Endurance is not a strategy. For humanity, it's identity. Asterisk, the footage resumed without pause, and this time, the years stamped in the corner began ticking upward. Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Now, the cadets were met with dense jungles, endless deserts, collapsing cities lit by tracer fire and drone strikes. The weapons had changed, more efficient, more precise, but what hadn't changed was the way humans fought. They didn't retreat like programmed tacticians. They adapted like predators. Every loss became a new strategy, every setback became a lesson soaked in blood. In Vietnam, a unit ambushed and outnumbered melted into the trees, then emerged behind enemy lines. In Iraq, a soldier guided a wounded squad through urban ruins for hours with a broken leg. In Syria, civilians turned rubble into fortress outposts, holding off attackers with barely anything but desperation and makeshift traps. The cadets leaned forward now. This wasn't brute force. This was survival turned into doctrine. Kriv's analytical module projected data. Psychological endurance exceeds expected collapse at 30% casualties. Humans held at 72%. That wasn't just abnormal, it was impossible by known models. Another statistic appeared. Combatants resume active engagement within 47 seconds of witnessing fatality of kin. The hall went silent. Then came the segment labeled Resilience Footage, 2030's global collapse. It's no enemy forces, no armies, just Earth, breaking under its own weight. Climate disasters, political fragmentation, economies in ruins. The cadets assumed this was the extinction arc. But instead of watching a planet fall, they saw something no one expected: rebuilding. People forming community grids. Old tech repurposed to grow crops in glass-shattered skyscrapers. A grandmother hand-cranking a generator to power a clinic. A teenager teaching a group of children math on a wall painted with ash. There were no orders, no centralized command. Just instinct. Help others build. Protect. Gayla's voice shook. Why do they keep going? There's no incentive left. Number. Survival advantage. No central coordination. It doesn't make sense. Tamrak growled lowly, for once not to mock. Because it's who they are. Then a new folder autoplayed. Civilian crisis response footage, Pacific quake swarm. Cadets watched as rescue workers crawled through unstable ruins to pull children from flooded tunnels. A father tied his last oxygen tank to a stranger before being crushed under debris. The visual record ended with a 6-year-old girl covering her baby brother with her own coat, shielding him from freezing rain. Her pulse was flatlined by the time responders arrived. The boy lived. One cadet stood and walked out. Another turned their head away from the screen. Voiceover from the simulations archive finally spoke. Human response to mass trauma is not despair. It is community. Whispered, they're not just survivors. They're defenders of something we can't quantify. Footage from Earth's first colony attempts queued silently, but no one moved. Not yet. The cadets sat still, haunted by what they'd seen, realizing the assignment wasn't about tactics. It was about a truth far more terrifying. If you try to break a human, all you do is give them something to fight for. The first off-world files opened with the same sterile voice, now saying, beginning Terran Expansion Archive 2045 to 2072. The cadets braced for more brutality, but nothing could prepare them for what came next. This wasn't Earth anymore. This was humanity unshackled from its home world, unleashed across stars. Footage from Mars showed humans terraforming frozen rock with patience and rage. On Titan, they mined toxic lakes with gear that shouldn't have worked, solving engineering problems through reckless trial and error. And when pirates raided the Jovian outposts, humans didn't retreat. They waited and then retaliated, not with overwhelming force, but with cruel precision. Not a single pirate vessel escaped. Not one. The next segment, labeled Varelian Skirmish, classified footage, revealed first contact conflicts with the Srati Dominion. A full Srati fleet descended on a human research convoy. Technologically, the humans were outmatched: fewer ships, lower shielding, less advanced targeting systems. The cadets leaned in, ready to watch humanity break. Instead, they saw humans disable their own engines to sling themselves using gravity wells, crashing into enemy holes with pinpoint accuracy, pilots ejecting at the last second, coordinating, sacrifice into synchronized attack. One disabled frigate vented oxygen manually to hide escape pods as it charged its reactor for overload. It detonated in silence, taking out 3 Srati cruisers with it. Temrak exhaled sharply. They calculated their own deaths into the strategy. Another clip followed. A lone human vessel surrounded. Surrender was offered. Instead, the crew patched a distress beacon to loop a child's voice, reading poetry. They fired everything they had, knowing they wouldn't survive. When reinforcements arrived, not one human body was recovered intact, but their sacrifice had held the line long enough for 3 colonies to evacuate. Then came footage. Not of destruction, but mercy. A squad of human Marines found a crashed Srati shuttle. Inside, wounded, unarmed, terrified, the humans gave them water, medical supplies. One even sat with a dying enemy and held its hand. The cadets watched in stunned silence. "Anorak," whispered they spared the helpless. Jayla nodded slowly. Even when they're at war, they still remember who they are. The next battle showed a human commander refusing to retreat from a failing moon base because 2 civilian children hadn't reached the last shuttle. He stayed, so did his entire platoon. They fought until the rocks turned black with blood. Children survived. A clip played of a female pilot gravely injured, broadcasting her final message before ramming her ship into a weapons array. "If you think we fight because we hate you, you don't understand us at all. You fight because we love each other more than we fear anything." Kriv's voice cracked as he muttered, "Their strength isn't military, it's emotional. That's what powers them." A long pause followed. No one spoke. They didn't need to. The simulation faded to black, and a final data point blinked on screen. Probability of capitulation under extreme conditions, 0.002% for humans. It wasn't about victory. It was about never giving anyone else the right to decide when they were done. Asterisk the observation. Hall lights stayed dim as the screen displayed its final segment. Red tag debrief. Human classification review. Only 12 cadets remained. The rest had either walked out, shaken, or submitted requests to be reassigned. What had started as a trivial archive review now felt like a burden none of them had asked for. Hologram flickered to life in the center of the hall, an elder, being with translucent limbs and a voice that resonated like submerged bells. No. Introduction. No ceremony. You have now seen why Earth was classified under the red tag protocol. Tamarik leaned forward, jaw tense. Jayla sat motionless, her eyes distant. Kriv didn't even blink. The instructor continued. Humanity is not marked red for technological superiority. In that, they remain mediocre. They are tagged because no metric, no simulation, no projection has ever accurately predicted their breaking point. A chart unfolded in the air species, stress responses, collapse thresholds, morale decay curves. Humanity's graph was not curved. It was jagged, irrational, and ever rising. Under trauma, they didn't weaken. They transformed. They call it grit, the voice said. But what you witnessed is not grit. It is identity forged through adversity. Pain is not their deterrent. It is their foundation. Kriv spoke without permission. Why show us this? Why not restrict this knowledge? The instructor turned its gaze. Because one day, you may stand beside them, or in their way. Either path requires understanding. A new file opened, non-combat. Interactions. Human doctors treating alien children in plague zones. Human engineers building habitats for species whose own governments abandon them. Footage of a Terran diplomat stepping between 2 warring alien factions. It's unarmed and refusing to move until peace was signed. Tamarak looked down. The violence he could process was the mercy he didn't know how to handle. Then the screen lit with a final clip, grainy, recorded in the aftermath of a planetary evacuation. A human commander, bloodied, uniform torn, standing before a mixed crowd of alien refugees. He looked into the camera. You don't have to like us. Hell, you don't even have to trust us. But when the fires come and the stars fall, we'll still be there. Not because we're fearless, but because someone has to be. The room was silent. The instructor's voice returned.
Oh.
Now you understand why conquest is not an option. Why negotiation is not conducted through threat. Humanity does not respond to dominance. They respond to need. And they answer it no matter the cost. Jayla asked softly, what happens if they ever turn that resolve against all of us? The instructor didn't flinch, and we pray they never run out of love before they run out of enemies. Outside, through the observation dome, Earth glowed like a quiet ember, small, blue, unassuming. But every cadet knew now it was not the size of Earth that made it dangerous. It was what lived there, what refused to die there. The simulation ended. None of them stood immediately, because deep down, they all understood the truth. You don't study humans to defeat them. You study humans so you know when to stand aside.